Okay, good morning, everyone. So we are back. Hopefully, won't have any unexpected pauses in the share again. Okay, let's begin. We're on Daf Zayin Amud Beit. So we now get finally to the third din of the Mishnah. Let's go back to the Mishnah for a moment. Again, Daf Bet Amud Aleph, beginning of the Masechet. We had three cases, three Machloket, Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, you remember. So the first one dealt with Beitzah Shnodab Yom Tov. Is of course where the Masechet gets its name from. We dealt with that at length. Second one, which we dealt with very briefly, was the Machloket regarding Pesach, regarding Chametz and Saor, or Gazait, or Kotevet. And then the third din, which is maybe a little bit more complicated, and it's not completely clear from the language of the Mishnah exactly what the case is, and that's what the Gemara is going to discuss. We're not 100% sure what the case is here, which Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel are arguing about. But what we know is this: the Mishnah says, Hashochet chaya v'of b'yom tov. Somebody who shechts a chaya or a bird on Yom Tov. Again, you are allowed to perform shechita on Yom Tov, unlike Shabbat, because it is a malacha of ochel nefesh. Nowadays we don't do it, but that one could do that in order to have the animal or the bird to eat it for Simchat Yom Tov. So Hashochet chaya v'of b'yom tov. Beit Shammai אומרים יחפור בדרכב ויכסה, ובית הלל אומרים לא ישחוט. Beit Shammai say you can, after you have performed the shechita, there is now a mitzvah of kisuy hadam, that the blood has to be covered up with earth. And then the case here is where one has not prepared the earth in advance in order to cover up the blood. So the shechita itself is a malacha of ochel nefesh. But when it comes to digging, we have a number of potential problems. When you're digging up, you could have a problem of chafira. There could be a number of problems here. When you're digging up and you're crushing the earth, that could be a malacha of ktisha, which is a derivative of tochen. It could be that you are making the area where you're digging up, you're making a sort of a pit, so that might be related to boneh. The dust itself, the earth itself, could be muktzah. Okay, it's a number of different problems. And those melachot itself, this is something we're going to see throughout the Masechet as well, which is where I'm allowed to perform a melacha for the sake of ochel nefesh. What happens if there's another melacha that comes along with it, which is not directly for the sake of ochel nefesh? And am I allowed to perform that as well? So here the case is this: you can, the shechita itself is permitted, but once you do the shechita, you have to do the kisuy hadam. Kisuy hadam now involves melachot. And those melachot are not for the sake of ochel nefesh itself. So Beit Shammai says, and again, this is one of the cases where Beit Shammai is lenient and Beit Hillel is stringent. So Beit Shammai says it's okay. Beit Shammai arim yachbor badeke veichaseh. You can take a shovel, you can dig, and you can cover up the blood. Beit Hillel arim lo yishchot elam ken hayal afar muchan. Beit Hillel says no. If you had the dust, you had the earth ready beforehand, then you can do the shechita. But if you don't, you're not going to be allowed to. So don't do the shechita in the first place. Now, from before Yom Tov. Umodim, now Beit Hillel agree with Beit Shammai that what? That if you've already performed the shechita, then okay, well you don't have a choice. Now you have a mitzvah to say that you have to cover up the blood. So now you can dig it up, and you can do that. But lekatchila you shouldn't do it. And explain she'efer kira muchanu. Meaning, and if you have, now the Gemara is going to ask what on earth this last statement has to do with anything we've just said in the Mishnah. Efer kira. Kira is a type of oven that they had in the days of the Gemara. The dust from there, that is muchan, meaning that's not considered muktzah. So if you have this dust, which is not considered muktzah, you can use it. How exactly that relates to the previous sentence in the Gemara is not so clear. Previous sentence in the Mishnah, sorry. But what you see here, if you notice, the language of the Mishnah is a little bit strange. Right? Again, what are we saying? We're saying that if somebody wants to come use, I don't have earth, which I've prepared, so it's both in terms of muktzah and in terms of the malachot, in order to perform kisuy hadam. So Beit Shammai says no problem. You can still come, you can still shech the animal or the bird, you still do the shechita, and then you can dig up, Beit Hillel say no. Beit Hillel say no. You should not do the shechita in the first place unless you have the afar mochan. Beit Hillel agree with Beit Shammai that if you've already done the shechita, If you've already done the shechita, then you can go and you can dig up whatever you need to in order to do the kisuy hadam. So what we see from this is the following. Everybody agrees in the case of b'diavad. B'diavad, where the shechita has already taken place, that you can go and you can dig up the earth you need for the kisuy hadam. But have a look at how it started. The Mishnah started off, it said, Hashochet chayav of b'yom tov, Beit Shammai yachbo b'deka v'yichaseh. What does hashochet mean? Hashochet means, implies, if you've already done it. If you've already gone and done the shechita, then Beit Shammai say you can go and you can dig up the earth. That's the simple reading of the Mishnah, but that doesn't work because you say, if we understand the beginning to be the case of b'diavad, if you've already gone, you've already shechted, so Beit Shammai say that you can go and you can dig up the earth. And Beit Hillel say you can't. But Beit Hillel agree that if you've already shechted, that you can go. Right? You hear that doesn't make sense. And this is precisely what is going to bother the Gemara. The question is, what is the case? What is the Machloket between Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai? Is it a case where you've not done the shechita yet, or you already have done the shechita yet? Seemingly, it can't be a case where you've already done the shechita, because the Sefer of the Mishnah tells me that everybody agrees that if you've already done the shechita, you can dig it up. But the language from the Reisha seems to imply that it's already b'diavad. Okay, so that is obviously the question that's been running through our head since we read the Mishnah, and now the Gemara is going to spell it out for us. So, Daf Zayin Amud Beit. Daf Zayin Amud Beit, we are, I guess, third of from the bottom of the page, but more. The wide lines go down five or six lines. From the top of the wide lines, 2 dots, right? Hashochet chayav of b'yom tov. That's the quote from our Mishnah. So, hashochet, as we've just said, the word hashochet implies b'diavad, implies you already have done it. Hashochet diavad in lekatchila lo. In other words, our initial way, the simple way of reading the Mishnah, is that when Beit Shammai says hashochet, the one who shechs the animal, you can then go and you can dig up the earth for kisuy hadam, implies you've already done it. Hashochet diavad in lekatchila lo, if you've already performed the shechita. But then that doesn't work. Why? It says the Gemara Aima Seifa, but have a look a little bit further on in the Mishnah, and what does it say? It says Beit Hillel olim lo yishchot. Right? So the language of lo yishchot, that implies that at what stage we're talking about? We're talking about, the question is lekatchila, before you perform the shechita. So Miklal, if Beit Hillel is talking about a case and he says lo yishchot, don't do the shechita in the first place. So Miklal the Tanakama Sava yishchot. So we can imply from that Tanakama in this case refers to Beit Shammai. Shammai says that you can perform the shechita in the first place, knowing that you don't have the earth to cover up the blood. So this seems to be a contradiction. Number one. So answers the Gemara Lo Kasha. This is not difficult. There's no contradiction. Why? What are they saying? Lo yishchot v'chaseh kama. In other words, at this stage, the Gemara understands as follows. Yes, we're dealing with a case of b'diavad, meaning a case of where the shechita has already taken place. So Beit Shammai say, if you've already done the shechita, then you can cover it up. And Beit Hillel say, no. If you say lo, what are they saying? They're saying lo yishchot v'yechaseh. Don't do the shechita and cover it up. It says Rashi here, lo yishchot v'yechaseh, afal pi sheshachat lo yigmor. Even if you've already done the shechita, don't cover it up, because you cannot now dig up the earth and cover up the blood. So immediately says the Gemara that, well, we have a problem. If we understand it that way, this is what we started off with. He said, Ein Maseifa. Look now at the next part of the Mishnah. Look now at the Sefer. Umodim she'im shachat shechfor badeka v'yichaseh. Right? It says explicitly, but Hillel agree that if you'd already performed the shechita, then you can go, you can dig it up, and you can cover up. In other words, we just explained based on the language. The language of Beit Shammai is hashochet, and the language of Beit Hillel is lo yishchot. So we said that's a contradiction in terms. Hashochet is b'diavad, lo yishchot is lekatchila. We said no, the whole thing's talking about b'diavad. The whole thing's talking about after you've already done the shechita. And Beit Hillel are the ones that are saying, no, even after the shechita, don't cover it up. Well, that's impossible to say because the Sefer of the Mishnah says explicitly, Beit Hillel agrees. If you've already done the shechita, then you can go and you can dig up the earth and you can cover the blood. So what is going on? Right, so miklal the reisha lav diavadu. So it must be that the reisha can't be talking about diavad. Okay, that's the clearest proof. Meaning the fact that the end of the Mishnah says modim, it says explicitly lists the case that if the shechita had already taken place, that everybody agrees. That's not the case Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel are arguing about. But why does the Mishnah then still say hashochet? Beit Shammai said hashochet. That sounds like b'diavad. So now we have two answers, which are going to be very similar, but with a slight nuance between them, as to why it says hashochet and how we resolve this. Amar Rabba, hachi kamar. This is what the Mishnah means to say. Hashochet sheba limalech. It's as if, imagine if you had those two extra words in the Mishnah. When it says hashochet, referring to the person who wants to come and shochet, wants to come and slaughter the animal or the bird in order to eat it for the Yom Tov meal. Sheba limalech, and they come to consult. Ketzar omerlo. What do we tell them? Right? Somebody comes up and says, I now want to do the shechita. I don't have the earth ready to cover up the blood. I've just remembered I forgot to do that on Erev Yom Tov, turn on the plata and lit the fire and whatever it was. I forgot to prepare the earth to cover the blood. So what do we tell them in that case? So Beit Shammai omrim omer lo shchot chafol v'chaseh. Beit Shammai says, okay, you go, you do the shechita, then you dig up the earth, and then you cover up the blood. And Beit Hillel say no, you can't. Now you're coming to ask the question. You should have come to ask on Erev Yom Tov. You didn't prepare the earth, so you can't do the shechita. That's the case that they're arguing about. The case they're arguing about is somebody comes forward and says, I don't have the earth to cover the blood. Can I do the shechita? Beit Shammai says, yes, no problem, do the shechita, and then you'll just cover it up. That's Beit Shammai. Beit Hillel says, no, you can't do it. If they've already done the shechita, and then they come to ask, everybody agrees, okay, you've already done the shechita, you have to cover up. But that is the answer of Rabbah. And notice, what does Rabbah say? He says, Beit Shammai says, shchot, chafol, v'chaseh. That's the order. You do the shechita first, then you dig up the earth, and then you cover up. Rav Yosef amar achi kamar. Rav Yosef learns the Mishnah slightly differently. He says, here's what it means to say. And shochet sheba limalech. Again, somebody wants to know, can they do the shechita? What do we tell them? So Beit Shammai omer lo lechafo v'shochet v'chaseh. Beit Shammai say, you tell them, go dig up the earth and then do the shechita and then cover it up. Ubeit Hillel omrim lo yishchot ela im ken haya la'afar muchan mibod yom. So essentially, Rabbi and Rav Yosef learn the Mishnah in the same way. Both understand the case is that somebody who wants to know, should they, so it's in between the Katchil and B'diavad, we could say. It's before they've done the shechita, they want to know, should they do the shechita or not, but they don't have the earth to cover up the blood. Beit Shammai says, yes, go ahead. Beit Hillel says, no. What's the difference between Rabbi and Rav Yosef? So it's very subtle, but Rabbi said, shchot chafov v'chaseh. And said, do the shechita, then dig up the earth and then cover up. Rav Yosef said, chafol, shchot, v'chaseh. First go and dig up, and then do the shechita, and then cover up. So the difference here is in the order. According to Rabbah, you have to first perform the shechita, and only then you can dig up the earth. According to Rav Yosef, you can dig it up first before you do the shechita. Okay, so what are they arguing about? What are Rabbah and Rav Yosef arguing about? Yeah. In terms of essentially, are you required to, are you allowed to dig up the ground before you do the shechita? So says the Gemara, Abaye Abaye. So Abaye says now, Abaye Abaye al Yosef, Leima mal v'raba bid Rabbi Zeira mal Rav ka flagito. So Abaye says to Rav Yosef, so it's interesting. Sometimes we have a Machloket Amoraim in the Gemara. We say, what are they arguing about? Yeah, Abaye says to Rav Yosef himself. He says, what are you arguing about? What are you and Rava? What is your argument? It must be that your argument is about Rabbi Zera Marav. Rabbi Zera said in the name of Rab the following halacha: Tamar Rabbi Zera Marav hashochet tzarich sheitein afar lemata ve'afar lemala. Okay, so when we get to the mitzvah here of kisuy hadam, says Rabbi Zera in the name of Rab, it's not just kisuy hadam, it's not just covering it from the top, but you have to cover from underneath and on top as well. The blood has to be surrounded from both sides. How does he learn that out? So the Marbzah Marava Shochet Tzarech Sheiten Afar Lamata Ve'afar Lamala is to put earth underneath and on top. Shenei Amar V'Shafach Et Amo V'Kisau Be'afar. This is the pasuk where we have this mitzvah. It says Shafach Et Amo V'Kisau Be'afar, and you'll cover it with earth, cover it with dust. Afar lo ne'emar ela be'afar. It does not say Kisau Afar. You could just say just cover it up. Earth. English doesn't work, but cover it up earth, cover it up with earth, cover it up be'afar. So what is the be'afar here? So Rashi says, the Gemara says, melamed shashochet tzarich sheitein afar lemata ve'afar lemala. From here, Rav Zera, the name of Rav, learns that the shochet is to put the afar underneath and has to put it on top as well. So Rashi explains just what the limud is. He says be'afar, mashma shun, on the second wide line of Rashi. He says mashma shun nivlal v'tamun be'afar kodem kisuy. Be'afar means it's in. It's not just that you have earth on top, but that it's inside, that it's mixed up. Shun nivlal, right? That it's mixed. V'tamun be'afar kodem kisuy. Right, and then he says for kisau afar. If it had just said kisau afar without the bet, then I would have said then I would have said it only matters about covering it on top. But that's not what it says. I saw there is another parish. It's actually brought in the name of Tosfot Chachmei Anglia, who say that be'afar, they say that you could read it as bet afar, that the bet is gematria as two layers of afar, one underneath, one on top. Okay, either way, however we learn it. So therefore, you would say like this: the one who says you have to dig first says first you have to dig up the earth so that you have the earth which goes underneath the blood, and then you do the shechita on top of the earth you've already dug up, and then you put more on top. The other one who says, the other opinion that says no, you do the shechita first, says you're not required to do the earth underneath, you're only required on top. That is how Abaye suggested, right? Let's read it again. Amar Abaye Rav Yosef. Abaye said to Rav Yosef, therefore, Leima Mar v'Rabba b'Rabbi Zera Amarav kamiflegitu. That's what your Machloket is about this statement. Damar Rabbi Zera Amarav v'Shochet tzarich sheitein afar lemata ve'afar lemala. That you have to put the earth underneath and on top. Shneimar v'shafach et amo v'kisau ba'afar. Afar lo ne'emar ela be'afar. It doesn't say afar, it says be'afar, and therefore that melamed shashochet tzarich sheitein afar lemata ve'afar lemala. Okay, we're now 6 lines from the bottom of the page. Demar itle de Rabbi Zera, v'Rabba leitle de Rabbi Zera. Says Abaye, you, Rav Yosef, you have this halacha of Rabbi Zera, and Rabba does not hold by it. So answers back Rav Yosef. He says, actually, no, that's not our argument. Amar lebein medidi bein Rabba itlan de Rabbi Zera. Says Rav Yosef, no. According to me and according to Rabba, everybody holds this halacha which Rabbi Zera says. Both of us hold that one is required to have the earth underneath and on top. So what do we argue about? Rabba savar ikafar lemata in ilolo chashina dilma mimlach velo shachit. In other words, he says like this: we both agree that this would be that it would be required to have the earth underneath and on top. So says Rashi here, itlan Rabbi Zera, ubaina nafar lamata. We both require the earth to be underneath. V'achi kamal Rabba, and this is what Rabba meant to say. Im yecholin lomar lo shchot miyad. If you can say to him that you can go into the shechita now, sheyesh lo kvar afar lamata, that you already have afar underneath. So then, then we would allow it. In other words, according to Rabbah, that if Rabba would not allow one to dig up the earth first. So if the scenario is that you're in a place where you have the earth underneath, where the blood is going to go on top, and then you just need to dig up more to go off. Sorry, we have earth to go underneath, and if you're going to have to dig up more earth to put on top, so then Rabba would allow it. If you don't have that's a starting point. But Rabba won't allow you to do the shechita, to do the chafira before the shechita. Why? So this is what the Gemara says. He says this is what our Machloket is. So again, 4 lines from the bottom. It says Chayshinan. Rabbi is concerned for this. Dilma mamlech velo shachit. He says, what happens if you allow a person to go and dig up the earth? And again, you're violating malachot. And then you've dug it up and you say, you know what? Actually, this was hard. I'm not, you change your mind. You're not going to do the shechita anymore. And now you've done the melacha, which is not, therefore it's not letzorech. There's no ochel nefesh involved. And you've come to violate on Yom Tov. So Rabbah is concerned that if we allow a person to dig up the earth first, he might dig up, he might perform those melachot, and then he won't do the shechita. He won't do the shechita, and he's done it all for nothing. Rav Yosef, on the other hand, is not concerned for that. Right? Rav Yosef says, so he said, Chayshinan, in my opinion, he says, no, to the contrary, ha'adifa, it's better. If we aren't going to allow you to dig up the earth, then we'll have a scenario where we won't allow you to dig it up, and then you won't be able to do the shechita, and then you are going to be prevented from Simchat Yom Tov. You're not going to have your meal, and that's therefore it should be allowed. Right, that's what Rashi says here. It says Dilma. That's going on the concern of Rabbah. He says maybe after digging it up, he will change his mind. Velo shachit, and he won't do the shechita. Then it turns out that he actually just did it for no reason, and then he transgressed Yom Tov. Ha'adifa says Rav Yosef, the lo tigzor, better not to make that gzera, better not to make that decree. So the bottom line is, this is the machloket we have between Rabbi and Rav Yosef. If, according to Beit Shammai, do we tell a person, right, if a person comes along, a person says, I don't have the earth ready to cover up the blood for the shechita, am I allowed to perform the shechita or not? So in that case, Beit Hillel says no, and Beit Shammai says yes. But what does that mean? But Rabbi and Rav Yosef have this machloket in the opinion of Beit Shammai. According to Rabbi, Beit Shammai says yes, meaning you have to do the shechita first, and only then you can dig up the earth. According to Rav Yosef, you can dig up the earth first, and then you can do the shechita. Okay, everybody agrees, both Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, that if you'd already done the shechita, then you can come and you can dig up the earth to cover up the blood. And then we saw the seif of the Mishnah said, Modim, right? Everybody agreed, Beit Hillel agrees that if the shechita has already been done, then you can dig up the earth in order to cover it. So Amar Rabbi Zrika, Amar Rav Yehuda, v'hu sheyesh lo deker na'utz mi be'od yom. Says there is a condition, not so simple. That which we say, which we're allowed to go and as we mentioned, the possible problems that you have here in terms of digging up the earth on Yom Tov, you have problem of melachot, and you have a problem of all the earth being muktzah as well. So here, Rabbi Zrika says, name Rabbi Yehuda, all this that we're talking about that we would allow it is where you have a deker na'utz mi'bod yom. You have a shovel that's already in the ground from before Yom Tov. Having the shovel there, it seems to be that would overcome the problem of muktzah. But we still have the problem. The Gemara says, even if you have the shovel that's there, you're still doing melachot. It says v'haka avid k'tisha, right? When you are digging up the ground and you're crushing up the particles of earth, that is k'tisha, that is a part of the melacha of tochen, of grinding, and therefore it still would still be forbidden, right? Haka avid k'tisha. So Amar Rav Chia bar Ashi Amar Rav Chia bar Ashi, says in the name of Rav over the page now at the beginning of Tafchet, he says be'afar tichoach. All of this is talking about where it is very soft earth. It's a soft earth, which is already sort of it gets crushed up, and therefore you're not crushing it yourself, so you're not performing that melacha. So only there it's enough. Says, but what about the fact that you are making a when you dig it up, you're making a pit, you're making a hole in the ground, and that is says Rashi chayav mishum boneh, that mishum binyan, that's a melacha of building. So Auntie says Kidder Rabbi Abba, De'amar Rabbi Abba, hachofer guma b'Shabbat. Okay, so he says again, you're not digging, for the sake of building the pit. You're digging for the sake of having the earth that you're taking out. It just so happens that there's a pit that is made, so maybe this is a melacha she'einat shechita gufa, or maybe it's even less than that, and therefore it's going to be exempt. So says Rabbi Abba. Says Rashi, patur aleh, kidim falish tam belakam. The kevan de enot tzarich, ela leafla. You don't want the pit itself. You're not trying to build that. You just want the earth that's inside. V'lo leguma enot boneh v'lo cholesh. You're not building. You're not plowing. Ela mekalkel. You are destroying. Right? V'kol mekalkelim pturim. Maybe Rashi explains over here that the ptur comes from the fact that it is mekalkel. We have a number of different conditions when it comes to melachot of Shabbat and of Yom Tov, that it's only an Isur D'Oraita when it's Melechet Machshevet. Melechet Machshevet means that it's a considered melacha, it has intention, it's constructive, number of different conditions. One of the conditions for something to be not to be a Melechet Machshevet is the fact that it's Mekalkel, that you are not constructive, but it's destructive. Again, if we just explain, that it's a melacha she'einat shechita gufa, so that's still a Machloket, and that's still not so clear that one might be exempt from that, but it might not be allowed. But here Rashi tells us that we have another ptur, which is mekalkel, which is destroying. So not so straightforward as it seemed in the first place in the Mishnah. There's still a number of conditions one wants to be able to dig up the earth. It has to be in a case where the shavu is already there. Mibod yom has to be where it's afar tichoach, that it's a soft earth, so you're not actually performing the malacha. And then that's where Beit Hillel are willing to. That is where Beit Hillel are willing to be lenient and allow that. Okay. The next thing we saw, the last line in the Mishnah that said She'efer kira muchanu, and the Gemara is going to ask what on earth this has to do. This has to do with what we've just discussed, right? We said that you have a problem of the earth that's going to be muktzah, and the Mishnah told us that if you have efer kira, you have this dust that's from the inside the oven where you're cooking, that is not muktzah, that's mukhan. The Gemara here asks, efer kira, man dechashmei, who's talking about efer kira? You're digging up earth from the ground. That's what we need not to be muktzah. So the Gemara is going to discuss it. I'm going to see exactly, get into some of the parameters of muktzah. We will pick that up tomorrow.
Thank you.
Shkoyach, thank you.